Do arguments for God work?
Are they any good? And if so, do scholars take any of them seriously?
The short answer is yes.
In this video, we will explain why.
But lastly, and more importantly, why should it matter to you?
People have asked me, so like, why am I doing this series on proofs for God's existence? I've spent the past 18 years looking at the evidence and arguments for God's existence. So why have I done all this? I've had such a deep fascination in the big questions, and I think the biggest question is whether or not God exists. And so what I did during my high school, I chose to remain very skeptical about the existence of God, and I chose to live my life any way I wanted at that point, just kind of living a very hedonistic kind of existence. But that changed when I heard a debate on the existence of God between an atheist and a minister who was also a philosopher. My ideas coming into the debate was like, oh man, this Christian's going to get totally wasted. Oh, there's no reason to believe in God or anything like that. And what I found was the opposite. I listened to the debate, and the Christian pastor and philosopher presented clear arguments for the existence of God, from the uniformity of nature, for morality, from the laws of logic, and to trying to argue that all of that's grounded in a divine mind and will and a goodness of, and it was just such clear arguments that were all stringed together, and it was, the atheists had no response. It blew me away how clear they were, how the atheists could not provide any sort of decent response, or any response at all for that matter. Like, wow, God exists. Well, that kind of changes my life a little bit. I decided to look more into this shortly after, gave my life to Christ, looking at the arguments and reading through the Bible. It changed the entire trajectory of my life. Hearing these arguments is what caused this major just shift in my life, this major transformation in how I lived my life, how I treated people. I went afterwards to study at Biola University, got my MDiv at Westminster. This whole time I've been kind of investing into these arguments, because this is what caused me to get interested in this in the first place. These questions really strike at the heart of who we are, why we're here, the purpose of our existence. I cannot even conceive or think of a bigger reason for why we exist, than God's existence. That is the biggest philosophical question to me. I think of the movie Prometheus. This guy who's searching, it captures his desire to search out why he is here, why the creators could have made him. And that's the biggest question. Why are we here? Who is our creator? What does he want from us? Why did he create us? All of those questions strike at the very heart of the purpose of our existence. But there's a problem that I've encountered transitioning from the kind of more academic world, studying the arguments for God's existence, especially in academia, and to the boots on the ground. People literally have no idea whatsoever that there are actually an overwhelming amount of arguments for the existence of God. Like, people are like totally, completely clueless. I have found that if you encounter like the average skeptic on the streets, they will say, oh yeah, there's no like evidence for God, and like, look at all this evil, and yeah, like, there's no way. This belief in God's totally unreasonable. And little do they know that the argument they're using, the problem of evil, is filled with so many problems. Trying to do divine psychology as to why would God permit certain things to happen, and you're trying to do divine psychology in an infinite being. And so even atheists have said this problem of evil is very unsuccessful. There's only 2 arguments against the existence of God, whereas there's 50 plus arguments for God's existence. And when you're kind of looking at the scales there, it's really overwhelming. And the only arguments that atheists have are really arguments that depend on trying to like get into the divine mind and do psychology on what an infinite being would allow or wouldn't allow. Why is he allowing this? Why did this happen? Why did this occur? And, for a finite being to do divine psychology on an infinite being, it's a very fruitless endeavor. And that's why the problem of evil has kind of really fallen apart, in my estimation. There's kind of a growing field in Christian philosophy, arguments for God's existence, that God's doing pretty good in philosophy. And this is from an atheist philosopher, Quinton Smith. He states as well: God is not dead in academia. He has returned to life in the 1960s and is now alive and well in his last academic stronghold, philosophy departments. So you compare what Quinton Smith says to the average guy on the street who says there's no evidence for God's existence. We posted, 50 arguments for God's existence. We got a lot of comments in the section. People were making all sorts of colorful comments and everything. And this is what one skeptic remarked. He says, just one argument would do for me. But seeing as there aren't any real ones, I'll give it a miss. Thanks. So another gentleman remarked confidently, there are none, referring to there are no proofs. If there were evidence, atheism wouldn't exist. Everyone would believe because evidence. The reason this debate continues is because there is no proof. The failure of the theist to prove the claim is widely known. Apparently it's widely known. Everybody knows about it. See how people think? They just take these things for granted without knowing really what's going on at all. Causing membership worldwide to dwindle. What's interesting about that is every statement he made is wrong because atheism is dwindling, actually, but theism is growing worldwide. Atheism is a minority position. Very few people hold to it, as a matter of fact. Theism is growing faster than the human population. Here's what another gentleman said. If there was any proof, I'm pretty sure I would be aware of it. If there was proof, you wouldn't have to take any claim on faith, totally misunderstanding the whole idea of what faith is. Faith is trust. I know my wife exists. We know we have relationships with friends that we know exist, but we have trouble trusting them. Even if I had an infallible proof, which I think I do, for God's existence, I would still have trouble trusting him because it's a relationship and you can have trouble with trusting, which is what faith is, even if you know something exists, like a friend, like a spouse, and so on. Don't take from that I don't trust my wife, by the way. That could be misconstrued the wrong way. So here's my goal. As I've encountered these types of people who think there are no reasons to believe that God exists, this is kind of what I've set out to do. My goal here, because some of those arguments are so hard to understand, it's going to be like not as apparent to you. But I want to spend my time on the most well-known arguments and the clearest arguments for the existence of God. Make it easy to understand so it's not just so high level that you're just like, oh, I have no idea what this guy is saying. So yeah, I'm going to treat the most popular proofs, survey them, and I'll cover the main objections. Now, obviously, I can't cover every objection. There are probably 20, 30 articles on all the objections you can come up or the counter responses from theists. My goal is to survey each argument in a 30, 45-minute time period, and then open it up for questions. Yeah, I'm going to just kind of give an overall kind of survey of each argument, kind of present the general thrust of what the reasons are for thinking this argument is true. And when I say it's a proof, I mean it's a logical argument. It's more reasonable than not to affirm. And so I'm not saying that every argument I give is going to be like given with 100% certainty, but it's more plausible than the alternative. I'm showing that each premise or proposition is more reasonable than not. So I'm arguing proof as in like it's a reasonable proof. It gives good evidence for the existence of God and for belief in God.